Welcome to High Gluttony, everybody. I'm Gretchen.
And I'm Becca.
And today we are making ramen. And oh, did we learn so much when we decided to do this in the span of about a week. We became, I was going to say experts, but no, not even close.
Not even close.
Not even remotely close. Have a much finer appreciation for the art of ramen at this point.
Yes, we learned so much. I learned even more when editing because I had forgotten how much we talked about. But we did try to only keep in the important things for you, at least as far as we understood them. We do use a recipe from Just One Cookbook. And I think this is, what would you say, Gretchen, about a world level 2? It doesn't feel too complicated, but there are quite a lot of steps. And I would say world level 2 only based on the version we did, which was a pretty simple attempt, because as you'll hear, there are some ramens that take days, months, years to perfect. So what do you think world level wise?
I think too, yeah, because you're right. It is quite a few steps because we also came to this wanting to like sort of basically be ready to throw everything together, and our prep ended up taking a lot more time. So I do think that makes it go into a higher world level, because it's not just like doing it, but none of it's complicated. It's just time consuming. That's right. What you want to pay attention to. Knowing your timetable. I think actually you could make this easier if you didn't do as many toppings as I ended up doing.
Right. You did a lot of toppings. I even did some frozen ones. So that made it much easier also, which actually I forgot that I did broccoli too. I forgot to put that on here. Anyway, sorry.
Look at you. You spelled bok choy right. I tried to spell bok choy and I got it wrong.
If you can't tell, Gretchen and I are reading.
We're reading. Yeah, we made notes. All right. Now bok choy is spelled correctly on my section too.
And all my toppings are correct. We can move on.
Move on.
We didn't use any real special equipment, and we both made our stocks in advance.
So here's the process as we outline it in this episode. We're going to make our broth, cook our noodles, prepare our toppings, and assemble. And so we do a pretty good discussion about broth, since I used a chicken broth as my base. Becca used a mushroom, right? You used mushroom broth?
Yeah, well, I made one. It was veg with porcini powder and an umami bouillon.
There you go.
So kind of mushroom, but I didn't use actual mushrooms.
Okay. Well, porcini powder is made from mushrooms. So
there you go.
And
the bouillon had to have something.
I would guess your umami powder probably at least had a little bit of mushroom in it.
We are trying to distinguish a little bit with stock and broth, but we are kind of interchanging them. But the process that we go through is basically that we both have stock that we made in advance, as we said, and then together we're making the broth for the ramen. So sorry if we interchange those, but that ramen has broth, you use stock in it, but typically you would say ramen is a broth and noodles.
I believe the technical definition of a broth is when you actually use meat, and stock pretty much only uses bone. I think that's the generally accepted definition, but they are really interchangeable. So I mean, it's not
right.
Like horrifically different products. Like we're talking about meat or really just any kind of flavored broth.
Right. Well, technicalities aside, we do try to distinguish that so you can kind of understand the process or the steps that we're at in the process.
So here's how we're going to proceed through the episode. We're going to start with making our broth, and then we are going to prepare our toppings, cook our noodles, and then assemble. Kenzie thinks that's a good way to go. She says, yeah, let's do it that way.
She said, I was there.
I was there.
You did a good job.
That's how you did it. Yeah.
Yeah. That's the truth. Keeping us honest. Thanks, Ken.
Thanks, Kenzie. We discussed different types of broth, fairly in depth about the different types that we found. Anyway, I'm sure we didn't fully hit everything as deeply as we could have. I mean, we could spend 3 or 4 episodes on ramen probably. So who knows? We may
Right.
redo this at some point so we can dive deeper into. I mean, we should really like at some point do each
I feel
type.
like you and I are, yeah, that's totally, yeah, each type would be great. I feel like you and I are just going to end up doing our own research on it anyway. So we might as well, once we have that, do another follow up.
Maybe we could find a ramen chef to interview.
Ooh,
That'd be fun.
yeah, be really fun. So we talk about the different types of broth as in depth as we can and as surface level as we can at the same time. We then talk about noodles, different processes, different ways to prepare them, ingredients, all sorts of fun things. And then we get into miso. And Gretchen does a pretty deep dive for us into some of the different types of miso. We're both using mellow white miso for our soups today.
So here's what I'm using for my ramen. We do follow that recipe, Just One Cookbook, pretty closely. At least I do. Becca has a similar situation, but with no meat. So I'll be using ground pork, and then my toppings are bok choy, shiitake mushrooms, ramen eggs, some homemade bacon that I braised in some soy for a while, and scallions.
And then, as Gretchen said, I'm not doing any meat. I just totally skip over that step when it comes to the recipe of adding your meat into the mix. I just jump over that one. We talk about the options of maybe tofu or ground mushrooms, or if there are sort of soy meat products that you like, go for it. But my other toppings are frozen corn, frozen broccoli, super easy, maitake mushrooms, bok choy, and spring onions. And I'm glad we talked about that earlier because I forgot all about broccoli, and that was an important ingredient for me.
Well, broccoli's awesome. I love it. And then we do talk about a documentary from Hulu called Ramen Heads. Becca found this one. It is in Japanese with subtitles. It also makes you very hungry if you at all like ramen.
Oh my God.
You're gonna want to eat all the ramen afterwards.
Yes, yes. We get a lot of our information from this documentary in terms of the culture surrounding ramen and the dedication and commitment that the chefs have. And I think I'll speak for both of us, like very much gained a new appreciation for all things ramen after watching this documentary. And that, as I think Gretchen said, was on Hulu. So check that out if you have Hulu.
We also talk a little bit about our video games that we like. Since we say we like them, you might actually be curious as to which video games we do like. And so we talk about that some more towards the end.
There are some interesting crossovers with two of our favorite video games and our topics today. So how could we not?
It's true. That's true. We really did need to talk about it. So
yeah, no option.
Here we are. So we'll link all the information on the website as usual. So find all that information at hightgluttony.com. And we're on YouTube, Instagram, and Facebook. Facebook.
Yeah.
Facebook. All the handles are High Gluttony because I got them all.
And at the same time. Oh,
Years
no.
ago.
Well, kind of. Yeah, a long time ago. Yeah. So thanks for joining us, our gluttoniers. We hope you have fun with ramen. Again, this is a couple sections like we've been doing. So we're going to kick you off in just a minute with our section 1 outline. Thanks for joining us. Enjoy.
Hooray!
All right. Our first part, we are going to start off with talking about what kinds of stocks that we're both using, talking a little bit more in depth about the ingredients that we both use. And then we are going to start to outline our first couple of steps of the recipe, which are mincing garlic, ginger, shallot, and grinding sesame seeds.
And the grinding of the sesame seeds is like the most exciting part because we have some lovely audio for you all because it was very fun.
So fun.
And then we cook things. So So after the preparation of items, then we are cooking them. So we're doing all of our aromatics first. I believe I start calling them that in the episode. But if not, we'll introduce that here. Heating our oil, adding the garlic, ginger, shallot, and meat first, right? And we saute that. And after that's pretty well cooked through and fragrant, add spicy bean paste, miso, and the sesame seeds and sugar. And then straight after that, you add your sake and stock and simmer. Season your with white pepper and salt.
And then we close out this section with our broth kind of combining and us both discussing what cannabis we're enjoying as we cook.
Yay, part 1. Okay, we are a-going.
Here we go. Mostly prepped.
Yeah, got myself on low here. Feels like I'm warming up some.
Okay, low heat on our pans.
Yeah, I've had it on low. Does it say low heat?
Oh no, I don't know. We should read the ingredients and then talk about step 1.
Okay, so today we are making a miso ramen. We're cooking from justonecookbook.com, which thank you to Tamara for the suggestion of this wonderful new food blog. I don't know if she has a book, but I think I need to get it if she does.
Yeah, thank you, Tamara. This has been a fun adventure.
Yeah, obsessed with this website now. I will make all the things. For the soup, we're using already made broth to start with, or stock, pre-made stock is what we're starting with. I discovered during the documentary that we'll talk about in a minute that I could just go on a freezer cleaning binge. And so I've got duck stock and pork stock, and I'm going to add chicken stock.
Nice.
We're going for all the stock.
We're
doing one of those.
Yep.
So we're doing, what is that, 3 meat stock?
Yeah, you are.
Just no beef.
No
anyway.
Beef. And then I'm doing a plant-based one. So a veggie stock I made with just basically carrots, celery, onions. I think there might have been some garlic, some shallots, maybe something like that. And then I added some porcini powder. And then I also added some umami bouillon. They describe it as a pleasant, savory taste with dried seaweed, mushrooms. It has tons of fun stuff. Anyway, so that's what's going on in my stock. Pre-made stock that we both pre-made.
Right. Each ourselves. Going into this pre-made stock, or, well, I should say our pre-made stock is going into, you know, what my one criticism is that I would love it if this was written in the like what the order things are added.
Agreed. I like that when ingredients flow the steps.
So really it would be you would add 1 tablespoon of sesame oil to your medium low pan. So I've got mine has a scale of high to low, and in between you've got 1 through 9. So I'm putting mine on a 3, and I'm going to add my sesame oil because my pan's already been hanging out here on the heat for a little while.
And that, again, that's 1 tablespoon sesame oil, right?
Correct.
Okay.
And then you're going to adding to that 1.5 teaspoon of minced garlic. Feel free to add more or less as you like.
Thank you. I did.
You know I did too.
Of course.
And a 1/2 teaspoon of ginger. And I'm pretty sure that even though I've scaled this up, I've scaled it up on a scale of more garlic and ginger than I actually should have been putting in there. But I'm
ditto.
Not egregiously. So that's what I'm adding to mine right now. I added that to the sesame oil that was already in the pan.
Oh, this smells good.
I know. And we're adding our shallot too.
Okay, shallot's going in.
Shallot's going in. I believe it says 2 shallots, right?
1.
1 shallot, sorry. 1 shallot.
But my 1 shallot was kind of 2, so I'm mostly doing 2.
That's fine. A little extra onion flavor never kills anyone. Plus, I'm sort of obsessed with how healthy onions are for you. They're actually a really good thing.
So far, this is really good for you, what we've got going in here.
It's all basically vegetables.
Right.
I don't know if you would really consider ginger a vegetable, but I don't know why it wouldn't be considered a vegetable. I mean, these are just all sort of
spice, I guess.
Yeah, it's sort of a spice. I mean, these all kind of are in the aromatics family,
Mm-hmm.
That's why they smell so good when you cook them.
They smell so good.
All right. And to this, I will be adding some ground pork and cook that until it's no longer pink. Are you adding any? I mean, if you wanted to do something like ground pork that would be vegetarian, you could just do like ground up mushroom if you wanted to.
Sure. Or tofu, maybe.
Or tofu. Am I leaving this in the broth? I guess I am.
What's that?
I said, am I leaving the meat in the broth? I'm not straining it out, right?
Oh, I guess not. Let's see.
Yeah, leaving it in. All right.
Okay.
So yeah, you could do like a fine chopped tofu or something like that too. Although I think you'd probably just make that more of a topping.
Okay.
I don't know. I haven't cooked with tofu enough. Is it good to cook tofu in liquid? You've probably done that more than I have.
It's fine. I mean, what I enjoy the most about tofu is when it's crispy. But that being said, you'd want to drain it out as much as you could, and then you could crumble it and put it in. But it would have a really kind of silky, maybe even slimy texture. So you might want to hold it back or cook it first a little bit.
Yeah, do a little bit.
But that
of
would be interesting. I think it would still lose any of that texture, but it wouldn't be as slimy.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so after the ground pork, if you're doing that,
then we will be adding ground pork or ground mushrooms or ground crumbled tofu or
nothing.
Or nothing. Because really, ramen is whatever you want it to be, it seems like.
That is what we have learned. Yeah.
It can be so many things.
Yes.
We've got our aromatics. Now I'm going to add the miso and the chili bean paste.
And so that was 3 tablespoons of miso and
teaspoon of the spicy chili.
Okay.
And that next we're doing sugar and sesame seeds.
So we just added 3 tablespoons of miso, followed by 1 tablespoon of sugar.
Oh, and 1 teaspoon of spicy bean paste.
Thank you.
Miso can cook fairly quickly, and did we say it's a yellow or a white? Sorry, we're using white.
Mellow white, I think, is why I always want to say yellow.
Yellow.
Right? We're both using white miso. And I couldn't find bean paste. I found I think, Korean version called samjang, which isn't totally the same, but has some similarities and crossovers. So we'll see how that works.
I think this is how I end up with lots of things in my pantry, because I won't have the right thing. So I'll buy something that's sort of close to it.
Right.
And then I'll find the right thing later and then acquire that thing also.
Yep.
So I'm adding my sesame seeds. That's the next thing. And the sugar.
And that was 1 tablespoon of sesame seeds. And those are roasted and then ground down a little bit. And they suggested in a mortar and pestle. I didn't have that. I just used a muddler.
I did it in a mortar and pestle. And then we recorded the sound because it sounded really cool.
Yeah. So we're going to insert that in because it's really fun.
It's cool. Because they pop. It's very fun, especially if you put them in the pan into the mortar and pestle right after you put them in a hot pan. Don't use a glass mortar and pestle. If that's the case. Do not put hot things. I did that today where I put something into hot glass that wasn't hot, and now I don't have that glass thing anymore. So,
No.
So learn from me, children. Trying to gauge how far. It just says to mix well. I guess I can add my chicken stock and my sake.
Okay.
Sake? How's this pronounced?
Sake. So that's 1 tablespoon of sake and 4 cups of stock.
Or the crazy amount I'm about to put into mine.
Right.
And here goes 2 cups. And then I think this is another 4 cups. And oh my goodness, my pan is really full. And I have more. Oh, ow. Oh. I smacked my head on my shield. My hood. The hood. But this other stuff. Are you okay? I'll be fine. Just need to. I used to have I bought some of those baby things that people put on the corners of tables and stuff when they have small children.
Oh yeah, the like plastic bumper things.
because I kept doing that and I haven't done it in a long time.
And then season to taste with salt, right?
Yes. And the white
Okay.
pepper.
Or do we feel like this broth is at a point, or this stock is at a point where it can, I guess, okay, it's broth now. We're going to talk about all this in a minute and why we're trying to distinguish between these two.
I'm liking how this is looking though.
Yeah.
And I mean, basically now my broth is done, although it's quite has a good layer of fat on it. I may do some fat separation from that.
Okay.
Defatting. We talked over defatting before.
Nope.
You really want one of these nice gravy separators, I think they call them for the most part.
Like a slotted
Yeah, it's got a
spoon.
slotted top, so that catches anything that you don't necessarily want going into your gravy. And then you have to have a stopper in the spout so that the fat doesn't get in.
Okay, so Gretchen's holding the spoon in her right hand and what looks like a big measuring cup with a lip.
Yeah.
And
It
you're
has a
okay,
huge,
and so and you're just
So you want to kind of skim along the top because most of your fat is going to be on the top of your stock because, fat and water don't mix.
sure. So we'll talk more about this documentary at some point, but we both watched a documentary called Ramen Heads that we found on Hulu. And
Well,
it was
you
interesting
found.
to me. I found on Hulu. It was interesting to me which restaurants skimmed fat and which didn't, or which chefs did.
Yeah.
It was cool.
My stock had a lot of fat on it. So I'm thinking that that's probably more fat than I really want on the top. I'm fine with some, but I don't want it to be
Too
standing out too much. Yeah.
Yeah.
But this is
Okay.
why this is so handy.
So the top part collects the fat still, and then you can pour out any liquid that's been separated back into your, in this case, stock. Cool. It's relaxing to watch you do it.
Fairly relaxing thing to do.
I could see that.
Yeah, you can get real finicky about it and just spend so much time doing this.
Sure. Get every piece of it.
Every little bit of fat. But I don't want to go that. I don't want to go to that extreme. Because
Right.
we've also put some nice sesame oil in this, so I don't want to.
Right.
I was gonna say, apparently this weed is really good for recording.
Awesome. Let's talk about that real quick. What have you been enjoying while we've been making our stock and broth?
So I enjoyed part of a lemon banana sherbet pre-rolled flour from Humboldt Farms.
Nice.
Well, they have the most darling little boxes.
Cute.
I love the marketing stuff.
Sure.
And then
it works. Yeah.
And then the little joints are super cute too because they've got this decorative filter to them.
Fun.
So they're pretty. And it's kind of the case is really nice. Might start keeping my vape pens in there. I tell you, I washed one of my vape pens.
No, was it bad?
Well, it wasn't good. I'll tell you that. It does actually work still.
That's good.
But don't leave vape pens in your pockets.
Eek.
Yeah, not cool.
Yeah.
All right.
What's going on with the terpenes in your
terpenes?
Strawberry lemon sherbet? What was it?
Lemon banana sherbet.
Lemon banana sherbet.
Well, it's 17% THC and 0.03% CBD.
Nice.
So
does it have terpenes listed?
It doesn't, but I'm
also enjoying something with banana in the title, which surprises me, but also doesn't surprise me that we're both doing something like that. And it's called Banana Trees with a Z. It's got a 22.5% THC, no CBD, and then it's mostly limonene, followed by caryophyllene and pinene.
Let's see.
I'm enjoying it. I think it's making me feel pretty relaxed, which is nice. I feel like I often do. I try to find something that makes me a little bit more amped up when we're recording, but it's kind of nice to just be feels good. Everything's fine.
All right, moving on to section 2. We're getting our broth off the heat, and I am still working on chopping all of my fresh toppings. Really, really regretting not using frozen stuff like Becca did. Then we're going to discuss ramen as a concept. So going back on the history. This is where we really dive into the documentary quite a bit
Mhm.
and how much that raised our awareness of ramen and ramen culture and the people who worship at the altar of ramen, I guess would be one way to say it. Like
Right. The ramen heads.
the ramen heads.
Yeah, it gives us a lot of insight. And as part of this, we spend a fair amount of time talking about a specific chef who was profiled in the documentary named Tomita, and his ramen style. His restaurant named Tomita was voted the best restaurant 3 years in a row as of the documentary. He's
Which was
probably won more since then.
yeah, I think it was
2016.
2016 or something
Yeah.
like that. It was like part of 2015, part of 2016.
We talk about his ramen style and his approach and the way he runs his shop, and it's pretty interesting. So we hope that our enthusiasm comes through as we talk about this chef and what we've learned through about ramen in general.
Okay, enjoy section 2.
Is your broth off heat?
Yes.
Okay.
Okay, because you're done cutting up your garnish, right? So
Exactly. Now that our stock is mostly in a good shape, we let that sit, and then we pretty much just have to cook our noodles and finish our toppings. So while we're doing that, we've got lots of fun stuff we want to talk about now.
yes, and so Becca's gonna lead the discussion, and I will weigh in because I was a bad little chef and didn't do my prep.
So we pulled this information from a lot of sources. Primarily, it came from that documentary we referenced already called Ramen Heads. It was really interesting. It is English subtitled, so you kind of have to watch it. You can't really be doing other things unless you speak Japanese or hear
Right.
it can understand it. But we wanted to talk a little bit about the origins of ramen, at least as far as what we had found, and then a little bit about what makes ramen so special. Then we wanted to talk about the difference between sukeman and ramen. And then we're going to talk a little bit about types of broth, and then miso, which is super interesting. And then we're going to talk about noodles, and then finish out the last couple of things we want to talk about as we wrap up our toppings and noodles. So while Gretchen is prepping, we're going to start talking about the origins. I found a couple of different things online about the origins. In the documentary, it said that the roots were really from China or the Chinese who were making wheat noodles in a broth. It either came way back in 1688, or it came in 1859, or it came over in 1910, or it came over and became more popular after World War II. So there are a lot of variations, I think. Ultimately, some version of wheat noodle and broth that's been around in Japan for a while, even though this does have more roots, I think, in China in terms of just using wheat noodle and broth. A couple of variations have come about since then, including miso and tonkatsu, I think is how you say it. We're working on trying to pronounce these things correctly, but bear with us as we go. So one cool fact about ramen is that 80% of the ramen shops at the time of this documentary, which was, I think, 2016, were small businesses, specialty restaurants, and bars, all serving that chef's favorite version or most practiced version or something along those lines. Each one has its own really unique flair, which is super cool and means that it is a little bit challenging for us to drill down in the little bit of time that we've been doing research on this exactly what all of the variations are, since there are many.
So many.
Right. So many. So we're
We'll
going
try
to do
and find a list. We'll find a list so that you can read a list. We'll go through a couple different types, but there are more than you would ever realize.
Right, with slight and distinct variations that change the whole thing. And I'm still trying to figure out what exactly all that means. But okay, so most of them are small businesses run kind of by individuals. They're often just like one chef in tiny little shops that are 4 feet by 6 feet or something, ranging up to larger restaurants that have huge followings where people are waiting from 6 a.m. until 2 o'clock that day to eat a bowl of ramen. So I do want to point out, though, that one of the things I noticed during the documentary and that they also called out is that it does really seem to be a male dominated industry. There are not a lot of female shop owners or female chefs. I hope that that is changing. I don't really know. Obviously, all of this information was pre-COVID, and I'm not sure what is happening right now with the restaurant industry in Japan, but
Yeah.
our information is a couple of years ago.
Right.
Yeah, Gretchen, thoughts?
Yeah, because when we first started talking about this, I thought that, I mean, there was really like a true ramen, and that's not really the case. Because it's done in so many different styles. Like it's done with meat, it's done with fish, it's done for, vegetarian, it's done with 4 different types of meat in the same broth.
Right. It's boiled for days. It's made that day only. It's got salt bases. It's got miso bases. It's got concentrate bases. There are so many ways to make ramen.
Right. That's why we said, well, try and come up with a list of some sort. But even the few different that we found was basically not even really scratching the surface. But to a certain extent, they're all a brothy soup with other, I was going to say protein, but that's not really always necessarily part of it. I guess it is a bit more of a meat thing than a veggie thing. Because like they do have the miso ones that are a bit more veggie, but they also use a meat broth generally. So
right. I think vegetarianism is pretty rare in Japan across the board. So I think it's becoming more common, but for the most part, it's not that normal. But yeah, there are so many different variations. There are so many different chef preferences. One of the things I noticed in the documentary was some chefs pay such attention to detail. Like there was one chef they profiled, Osamu Tomita, and he overhears one of his apprentices saying, "That'll be 5 minutes," instead of "That will be 5 minutes," and makes him go stand outside for a little while. So it just goes to show the attention to detail that some people are paying. And I think his apprentices also referenced him as constantly hearing things, constantly smelling things, just to a super degree, always aware of everything that's happening around him through his senses. And so Tomita, at the time of this, was voted 2 years in a row the best ramen chef in 3 years in a row. Okay,
it was
3 years in a row.
I believe there were 3 awards. Like I remember the big scrolling across 3. So
awesome.
Yeah.
So his name is Osamu Tomita. His restaurant is Tomita at Matsudo, which is an hour outside of Tokyo. So people will travel from Tokyo starting at, I think one person said they were on the 4:50 a.m. train. So they were up at 4:15 or something to go wait in line. The people start lining up as early as 6 or 6:30. And then they take reservations at 7 a.m. and give you a time to return at. So you can spend your whole day in this other city waiting again for one bowl of ramen. And it's such a testament to not only the effort the chefs put into it, but also the commitment. They call them ramen heads, but the commitment that ramen fans hold and will the lengths they'll go to seek out one bowl of ramen.
Well, because so basically what do you want to call it? The climax of this documentary was 3 of the best ramen chefs in Japan coming together to celebrate
the 10-year anniversary of Tomita's restaurant.
Yes, thank you. Apparently, this cannabis kind of good for recording because I'm talking through a lot of things, but also not great for memory. So
that's why I'm reading. I have notes. Yeah.
But it's funny because it was 200 people. These people started lining up at, I think it was midnight the day before
for the anniversary dinner. Yeah.
Right. And then they only let 200 people get in line. There were some people that showed up just after and they were so bummed, like
totally.
And so they did, served these 200 bowls of the special ramen, like collaborated on by all these guys. And it was so funny because their recipe planning for that was so funny to me because I that chef ego, like
Mm.
which is pretty universal. We all have a bit of an ego. So you put a couple of us together and it's like, oh goodness, these guys are so pretentious. But like they also like they're so committed to it. So it's like because I just had no idea and it's so integral. Like it seems like it's just such a widespread thing in Japan. Like there's
Hmm.
this one thing that every single shop has its own version of. And like you could spend your entire life trying ramen and like some of these guys like it seems like that's basically all they eat, like
Exactly. Yes. When you said the way that they created the recipe together was really interesting. I agree because I remember thinking they never wrote anything down. It was all just let's put in this chicken, let's put in that chicken, let's open it, let's taste it, let's see it, what it looks like, smell it. Okay, that goes in. That doesn't go in. This much of that goes in just by smell and taste and sight. And that was so cool that they have dedicated so much of their time to making this dish that they all know exactly just by the first like minute of interacting with this raw meat, like what they will make their base out of. It's so cool.
it's like, yeah, all right, yeah. Like and they got they had the special broth where they like I guess they kind of emulsify it, like let it cool down and then emulsify the fat into it and they did like a first test run and they were like, no, this is not good. Like and
Hmm.
it was so funny because they were like, we just I don't know, it either is too much like us or not enough like us. And I was like, okay, wait. It's not exactly what they said, but like
I know. I was like, I don't
so
remember that part.
oh, I think because I was just laughing because they were like, back to the drawing board and, started over. So I was just amused by the chefiness of it all.
Totally. But
So,
Tokyo alone has over 10,000 ramen shops, or, there were. But
right.
this dish for a long time was really a dish for a working person because it was everything you needed, all of the nutrients, carbs, protein, all of those things you needed to get through the day in one meal that was quick and affordable. And so that's obviously evolved over time now to the point where there are even ramen restaurants with Michelin star rating. So it has evolved a lot. And clearly, we're just scratching the surface of what some people, I think, consider like a lifetime commitment to understanding and learning.
For sure. Because this was my mom's favorite part of the whole documentary because we watched it together.
Hmm.
And that I think it was his oldest son was talking about like how he hasn't developed his taste yet. And,
Right.
like
Right.
he's got long way to go. Or he was very funny.
Yeah, it's such a familial industry. If your dad owns a ramen shop, it seems like there's a chance you'll
You
develop that passion also.
The other thing I wanted to comment on is that the way that their apprenticeship works. And I think this is so fascinating because I was like, this is actually ingenious. Because like the chefs don't actually like teach their apprentices. They expect their apprentices to learn just by being there and like
Absorbing what's happening.
absorbing what's happening.
Hmm.
And the only way you're going to make it is if you really pay attention. Like they're not going to tell you anything. You have to want to learn it.
Hmm.
So the main guy, he learned from his
He was an apprentice
mentor.
too,
Yeah.
who was like a god of ramen at the time. I can't remember his name.
Yeah, I'd have to look it up. Eventually, if you're good enough, whoever you apprentice with will help you, support you in getting your own place to do it. And I think
Exactly.
that's such a cool thing because it's what's the word I want? Generous, like
Hmm.
this is my little piece of land and you go over here and have your own little piece of land over here and
Right. Learn what you can and then go make it your own, and I'll be happy for you.
yeah.
Tomita said, good ramen you should be able to eat every day and not get sick of it. I think he then goes, I eat it every day. And then it showed him on his days off going to 3 different ramen restaurants. So that's all he is thinking about. I mean, obviously he's thinking about other things, but it's so cool. He makes a tonkotsu broth, which we'll talk about more in a second. But in his broth, there are 3 different types of sardines: powdered mackerel, pig heads, chicken feet, ginger, garlic, soy sauce stock, yuzu citrus, pepper, chili, bamboo shoots, seafood broth, fish powder, fish cake, pork, all of dried seaweed, all of these things go into it. And he has broth that has been, or I guess broth that has been stewing and boiling for 3 days.
4 days.
He has 4 days, 4 days.
Yeah.
Then
or is it 4 different ones? So it's 3 days, 2 days, 1 day, and
yeah, so it's 4 different types. So 3, 2, today, yesterday.
there we go.
And then he comes in every morning and combines them. He's the only one who can do it in his shop, and combines them into what will be that day's broth. Such dedication.
I mean, it's pretty amazing.
Yeah. There's a lot of passion in the ramen world. A little bit difficult to say exactly what makes it so special, but it also is so special because it's a labor of love. And that comes through when you're eating it. What would you say makes it so special?
I mean, yeah, that everybody, like, that they all do it a little bit differently, but they all seem to appreciate that sort of the differences. So,
Totally. Yeah, there's a lot of respect in the industry. A couple of quotes from the documentary were patrons engage deeply with their bowls, and you'd see people just like breathing it in or smelling it in and then eating it with such joy and pleasure. And that was really cool to see, especially that 10-year anniversary dinner. They were just like panning across the diners, enjoying.
They're all silent.
Totally.
Silence.
Another chef said, with ramen, you can develop a unique identity. It's a place to showcase your beliefs. And I felt like that really captured how these chefs approach ramen, that it is their belief system. It is totally powerfully a belief system.
Absolutely. Yeah.
That chef also said that it's the combination of ingredients in a specific order as you combine them that causes a series of chemical reactions that increase the umami flavor. What are your thoughts on that?
I can't say that I would disagree with that because there is basically a sort of way you're supposed to do things, but that's also dependent on what the flavors you want are.
Sure.
Yeah, I mean it is, because like the ingredients you use are an expression of your beliefs, and like I mean, it also can just be, there was that one guy that owned the stall at the very busy, he's like, on a really busy day, I'll do 1,600 bowls. He's like, it's, and he sort of basically was like, it's just food, like,
Right.
But
there's a purpose for it.
Yeah.
And then you move on. Yeah.
He's like, I want it to be really good, but I'm not here to fuss over it all day, baby. This guy.
Totally.
The vibe I got. Yeah. And yeah, he was like, he said he goes through at least 200, I think it was 100 kilograms of meat every day. I was like, that's insane.
How many pounds is that for people like me who don't really know how to do that math?
Because a kilogram is at least 2 pounds. So it's roughly like over 200 pounds a day.
Wow.
So
it's a whole cow. No, not really. But
I was going to say, I think cows are about 400 pounds.
Half a cow. Okay, welcome to section 3. We are spending the majority of this section talking about broth and miso, but we do kick it off by continuing to chat about Tomita because of his distinct style of serving noodles, which is called sukeman. And we'll talk a little bit about that more as you go through the section. But that was really interesting. I had never heard of that style before, and so we wanted to share that with you.
And then we talk about broth some more. But this time, it's more conceptual, not practical. So we learned about the types and that you can also use these singly or in concert with each other. They're usually some mixture. But we learned about tare, shio, shoyu, and miso.
Right. And then once we've opened the door for miso, Gretchen gives us that deeper dive we mentioned earlier, talking a lot about how surprisingly versatile, this accompaniment? What would
Um,
you?
I mean, it's almost more of a seasoning or a flavor
Mm,
base
mm-hmm.
because it's more akin to like a soy sauce or something along that line.
Sure.
Condiment. It's not really condiment. You don't really use it at the end. You usually add it, I think, at least. Well, but I think that's never mind. No, I'm going to stop right there because I could go on and on. I'm completely fascinated with miso in all of its forms at this point. So,
So we'll say this versatile fermented bean
product.
component product. So
Component.
Gretchen breaks it down, a component, product. Gretchen breaks it down for us between type, color, taste, location, and then even shelf life. So thank you, Gretchen.
You're welcome.
Enjoy section 3. We have been talking about this chef, Tomita, because the way that he makes his ramen is a little bit of a distinct style. And what that is called sukamen. And it is making the noodles, boiling them, and then cooling them down in cold water, and then putting them in an ice bath and serving them in their own bowl. And then on the side, you serve your broth. And that's for dipping. So sukamen, I think, literally means like dipping ramen. Very similar, slightly different. All of these are variations of udon or soba. So these 3 things make up the 3 sort of traditional noodles in Japan, although there
Right.
are so many.
These are the
Some
most
common ones.
popular. Yeah.
Exactly. We wanted to point out those before we kind of talked about some of the different types of broth that we've come across.
And they use, some versions use 1 or more of 2 or 3 of these, or so it's sort of interesting that these exist.
Because they're distinguished, but then again combined and changed and varied, and so these are the ones we've come across, like we said.
I think we'll have to do ramen part 2, or a different style, or because this is so the one we're doing today is a miso ramen.
Yeah,
Just one style of many styles. So
right.
the first one we're going to talk about is tare, which basically is like a really concentrated, almost like it's a priming seasoning for the bowl. Like the way I saw it was they would put the tare in the bowl and then they would add a different other broth on top of it, that then that mixture of the 2 is then the basis for that ramen dish, if I'm at all interpreting that correctly.
That sounds good to me. It does have dried seaweed, some sake, some soy sauce, and mirin.
Mm-hmm. Yes, that was. I mean, most of the recipes that had one of those on them, that was basically like, you need these 4 things, and you will mix them together, and then that you start with that.
And then the next one is shio, which means salt. And this is really one of the older variations, I think. It's one of the more traditional styles. It tends to be a little bit of a clearer broth. One of the restaurants that was profiled in that documentary, they made their shiho broth just from red snapper.
Mm-hmm.
Came out to this really beautiful golden color, but very clear.
So is this shoyu? Shoyu, or soy sauce, is a darker, clear broth base. Definitely uses the soy and is typically with a chicken or seafood broth rather than pork, which is fairly common for a lot of different types of ramen, is at least the inclusion of some sort of pork broth.
Mm-hmm.
I like this. This shoyu is a great mixer. It's sort of, I guess it would sort of be similar to the tare, where it's sort of added to or works with other broths.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that makes sense.
Concert.
Mm-hmm. A melody of broth. And then the next one we want to talk about is miso, that's the recipe that we're basing our ramen off today. Although, like Gretchen said, hers is throwing in a little bit of, I guess your stock also had animal protein. So
yes,
in some ways it could be a tonkotsu.
Right. If I'd had pork, then yes, because to me, tonkotsu is usually pork.
Right.
Almost 100% of the time. Like,
okay.
Because I'm pretty sure tonkotsu actually is like a word for pork.
Pork is synonymous with tonkotsu.
Right.
But miso is, Gretchen has tons of fun facts about miso coming up, but it is a bean curd paste. The story is much like if you listen to or Roots to Bud's Canna Quest, where we are drinking Negronis, and tell the story of Count Negroni, who walked into a bar and asked to change an Americano by adding gin. The story about miso is that a drunk guy walks into a ramen shop and says, "Can you add noodles to the miso pork soup that you have?" And apparently that's how miso ramen came about. So again, ask for what you want and you could spark a whole food or drink revolution. And then one other that they mentioned in the documentary was something called niboshi, which is just made from dried sardines. So I threw that on there because I hadn't come across anything else that was exclusively dried sardines based. So I thought that was kind of cool.
I missed that one. I clearly wasn't paying attention. Just dried sardines. That's all you need. Just sardines. I had no idea. Miso also seems to be a bit like every region has its own. It's got several different styles, so you can't really predict what's going on with that. But there's sort of a few sort of general types that they make. So, and basically miso is any combination of the things that I am about to say. All the different types. There's by ingredient type. So there's rice miso. That's probably the most common, I guess. Seems to be it's a mix of fermented soybeans and rice. And and there was another component to that about because it's not just rice. Like it's a rice something.
So referred to as rice, but actually has a couple of components.
It's rice koji. Koji. So
cooked.
Any cooked grain, I guess it's cooked grain, or because you also get soybeans and those are a legume. So you've got rice or barley or soybean koji. So those are the three types of koji that can be added to the miso. Typically the miso is made with soybeans. They do make it with other beans because occasionally people are allergic to soy. So, but then you also have a color component where there's red, white, and yellow. Red is basically, it has the longest fermentation period, at least a year, up to a year and a half, and generally is 70% soybean and 30% rice or barley. And then red miso has the highest level of protein. This is also from Just One Kitchen, or Just One Cookbook. Is that what it is? Just One Cookbook.
Just One Cookbook.
Yeah. All right. So you've got red, white, yellow. We've gone over red. Now we're going to white. White is 40% soybean and 60% of rice or barley. You don't have as long of a fermentation period. So it's typically a little bit not quite as intense. So like it's like kind of the difference between cream cheese and Parmesan.
Creme fraiche.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, creme fraiche is a little closer to that would be fresh, like because it's creme fraiche.
I was just thinking of flavors.
Oh, sorry. Yes, fresh. And then yellow is red and white mixed together. So.
Oh, of course.
And then you also have sweet, mild, or salty misos. They're slightly different flavor profiles. Now, this is very confusing because now there's this thing on here called koji miso. And I was like, wait, isn't koji part of miso?
Right.
And then it can be a regional thing. So from what I understand, you could have like a white regional, typically with a rice koji in it, if I'm understanding this correctly. It just depends.
It just depends. The one woman ran restaurant in the documentary was called Ichifuku, and she makes a miso and tonkotsu combo. But her miso base, I guess, or maybe the whole thing, it took her 10 years to develop this flavor that she uses now. And she uses 4 types of red and white miso from Shinshu and barley miso from Nagasaki for a 5 miso blend.
So we were really lame in how we did not go for multiple types of miso.
How long does miso last?
So it can last a long time. Basically, since it's a fermented product, and maybe we'll also talk about my old ass white pepper right now, because it's to the extent of, if you open it and it smells like something you wouldn't want to eat, probably I'd get rid of it. Or if it has no smell at all, then you know it probably just won't have any taste. So I think the primary issue is that the flavor is going to dissipate over time. So the faster you use it, the better. It's the same as with spices and things like that. So basically the thing is they don't necessarily go bad, but they do lose their potency. They lose some of their better qualities. So that's why it's better to use or have, make sure you're turning over not buying huge amounts of spices often. Of course, today I discovered I'd bought cinnamon and then bought more cinnamon today because...
Oh, of course. Yeah, that's my favorite game. Buying more spices.
More spice.
So the miso
can
last a while, but you want to use it as quick as you can, kind of.
Yeah, I had a container of miso in my fridge for a couple of years. So I'm not the best person to ask, because I do it. I was really interested in what else could I do with this miso? Although I did use a fair amount of the miso in the soup because I made a triple batch. So I used a bunch of it for the soup. But I was looking at other things I could do to use it up, and a fried pork cutlet. And there's some cookies that I am absolutely going to make because they have sesame seeds on the outside, and I am obsessed with seeing how this goes. I must taste them.
Yes, and report out.
And report back.
Yeah.
Yeah, so the faster you can turn over your miso, probably the better it is. Also, it's a probiotic because it's a fermented product. So your probiotics will be better the fresher it is. So
that makes sense.
I have not been giving miso its due for quite some time. So now I am on a mission to use up the miso that I have in my fridge, even though I used a lot of it. So I have maybe about half a cup or so left. So that should be easy for me to use up.
How much do the cookies need?
2 tablespoons. So I was like, well, this isn't really biggest use, but I'm deeply curious. So
double batch?
Could. Yeah. So yeah, I mean, miso is a hugely diverse product. You don't know what you don't know about something.
Right.
I probably could have spent 3 days researching miso to find out about all the types. Now we are on to section 4, my favorite section. It's the noodle section. Noodles. Noodles.
The noodle song?
It's a noodle song. I will write the noodle song. Noodles. Sorry. Promise I'll focus.
I love
it. So we discussed noodles. We talk how they're made, why ramen noodles are so special, how they've evolved over time. I think we get into that a bit.
I think so.
If not, we'll just have to cut that out. I don't know, or talk about it more later. I'm not sure. We then get into our boiling of our water, just finishing up our last little details on toppings, and get into the two most, well, I can't say that. All of this is interesting. It's all interesting.
Right.
But we do talk about a little bit more in depth about white pepper and butter as part of this section.
Mm-hmm.
Please forgive us for not being able to say the word oxidation.
Mm-hmm.
Hey, I said it right.
No, wait, you said oxidation.
Yeah.
It's oxidization.
Oxidization.
There. That's perfect.
Is it different? Is it the same? Wait.
Well, I don't know. Well, you look that up. The last thing we talk about in this section is an ingredient from Ring Fit called ashitaba, or sometimes referred to as angelica. And Gretchen has been wanting to find a way to talk about this ingredient for a long time because it is one of the really fun, surprising ingredients that are in Ring Fit. So we go into a little bit of a little journey side quest about that, which is super fun.
Wait. Oxidation is the combination of a substance with oxygen. while oxidization is the verb of oxidation, I guess. What?
Oh. Kenzie doesn't like it.
No, Kenzie doesn't like it either.
Well, we struggle with that word as we are still struggling with its meaning.
We'll fall down that rabbit hole later. So enjoy section 4. Because I love noodles, we got to talk about the noodles. So
we got to talk about noodles. We got to talk about noodles. Pretty much consistently, ramen noodles are made from a combination of wheat flour, salt, water, and something called kansui, which is alkaline water. And what's important about this is that it contains sodium carbonate and sometimes potassium carbonate and a little bit of phosphoric acid sometimes. And so this distinguishes the ramen noodle from other noodles.
Yeah, it helps contribute to that springy texture.
Okay. It also gives it that slightly yellow color.
What were we talking about?
The noodles, the kansui. It gives
right,
it that texture.
Right. So when we talked about this the other day, we were talking about how I'd come across a recipe that called for ramen flour, and I was like, well, what does that mean? So then, of course, I start Googling after we'd talked, and it's just a stronger wheat flour, so more gluten in it.
Okay.
So that it's got that chewier texture. You want to use bread flour, and even on top of that, get some vital wheat gluten to add to the flour, so there's even more gluten in it. And find that at a lot of grocery stores. Apparently, it's fairly common.
Do you mean you need to do those things if you can't find kansui?
Probably, yes.
Okay, right.
Bread flour is its own special thing because you want more gluten, because more gluten gives you more structure. But in this case, it's used to give it that chewy flavor.
Yeah, sure. And I think they say it helps reduce the moisture absorption.
I would bet that's true. I don't remember that bit, but I believe you.
I'm just reading.
The instant ramen noodles really didn't come about until I think it was like 1957 was what it said in the documentary. Although I had heard it was just after World War II, so I guess it could be either or maybe there's some dispute.
I think it could be either or, and probably there's dispute also. What I saw was that in an effort to get like wheat protein to soldiers stationed in Japan or in the area during World War II, the American troops started shipping these little like packets of wheat noodles. So who knows?
I guess we have to do a little more research to see if we can figure out the answer to that.
Absolutely. One other thing that was cool was that they said that some ramen noodles substitute eggs for kansui because eggs will give you, I guess, a similar benefit. Another thing that separates ramen is their size. And in that documentary, we saw everything from handmade and thick and long to thin and curly to some combo in between to hand cut even that were totally different. So I think the size can vary a lot too.
Yes, this is very true. They were very on about their noodles for the most part. I mean, that was
you saw a recipe method for what was it? Wrapping your noodles in plastic
and then stomping on them on the floor.
And we saw in the documentary there was one guy who had this huge piece of bamboo and he'd lay out his noodles on the countertop and then put the bamboo
under his leg
trunk, I guess, on top of that. And then he'd swing his right leg around over the top of the bamboo and then make this like swinging motion and kind of like bounce on one leg and swing down with his right leg and push him down all the way from one end of the counter to the other. And that was wild.
I mean, it's the kneading process. So developing that gluten.
I had just never seen anything like that. It was so cool. Then that guy would finish with hand kneading with his eyes closed. He said it tasted better when he did it with his eyes closed.
Well, so my theory is that it's not actually that his eyes closed make it taste better, but that the so attuned to his sense of touch that he has to basically eliminate the other sensory so that he can really feel the texture of the dough.
That makes sense.
Sorry, I decided that the water got a little funky, so I'm gonna replace it and then cook my noodles.
Oh, I didn't know you had your water boiling.
Yeah, no, I was like, and I hadn't even told you that my water was boiling, so
Yeah.
maybe you need to get your water boiling.
Okay, I'll do that.
Because I've got pretty much everything else ready here.
We've been talking about noodles, and now we're going to talk about two little sort of unique ingredients that, well, Gretchen's using both today. I couldn't find one of them, so I'm not using both of them. But we had found the addition of one of these in another recipe. So Gretchen, would you mind talking a little bit about why these two things are cool and loathed? No, I'm just kidding.
Oh, butter in ramen,
Hello.
to which I say, how could adding butter to anything be bad?
Yep. Yes, please. Yep.
Yes, please. So we voted to do that because we thought it would be kind of fun. And then white pepper also comes up fairly frequently. And I just want to talk about this because in culinary school, they forced us to use white pepper in things like mashed potatoes and all these other things. And I hate white pepper with a fiery passion deep in my soul.
It's your parsley.
It's my parsley. Did I write that? It's my turn.
No, but I just was thinking the way you were talking about it reminded me of how I feel about parsley. So,
they're like, you don't want black flecks in your food, so you have to put this white pepper in because it's gonna be prettier. Blah 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 blah. I hate it. To me, it smells like shit, like actual shit. It smells like shit to me.
So what is the difference between white pepper and black pepper?
White pepper and black pepper and green peppercorns are all the same plant. It just depends on how you treat the berries, which is what makes the spice.
Cool.
If you preserve, like typically green peppercorns are like brined, so they actually like preserve the outer layer as a green outer layer. Like that when they grow, that's what they look like. If you let it dry, that outer layer turns black. So that's your black peppercorns, is that outer layer that has dried and you get some oxidization going on. Oxidization.
Oxidization?
Yes, where it oxidizes.
Okay. Oxidization. Okay.
I think you can do that. I don't know.
Sure. Now we are. Okay. So that's black pepper.
That's black pepper. Then white pepper is where you let it ripen, but then you take the outer coating off. It's black pepper just without the outer part of the pepper. So I don't understand why I hate it so much, because it's the same thing, but to me it's gotta have that black outside. Otherwise, I think it's gross. So I think it's really, really weird that it's like my whole not liking fish thing that doesn't make sense to me. But
right,
yeah, the butter thing just adds a little richness. I as I said, love me some butter. So let's put it on some ramen. I am down for that.
Totally. Was there anything else you wanted to say about white pepper? You said you wanted to bring up ashitaba or angelica.
Yeah, just because I finally have a reason to bring up one of the weird fucking foods that's in Ring Fit that I was like, what is this? And then I'm like, I fucking know what this is. But I was really interested to learn that I know this as an herb called angelica. I feel like it's used a lot with fish, but I guess historically it was used to they make a sweet with it and they use it to decorate cakes. But it's
interesting.
It's sort of, so it's in the carrot family, or at least one of the varieties comes from Japan. So it's very frequently used in Japanese cooking.
Which makes sense because it's Nintendo based in Japan.
Right. And the only reason I even looked into that was because I noticed one of the famous chefs towards the end of the documentary, they were showing an example of one of his dishes and it had an angelica leaf on it. And so I was like, wait a minute. So I had to Google it and they use it all over the place in their cooking. I was
cool.
Amazed. It's huh.
So it's a root vegetable and the flour you use also?
Yeah, so you can use the roots, the leaves, and the stalks. I think the stalks are frequently what's candied.
Cool.
And then the leaves you can just use like spinach or any other green, I guess. It does have kind of like an anise-like flavor.
Mm.
But yeah, I've wanted to talk about the weird things in Ring Fit for the longest time, and I was like, I could kind of bring something up. I was so excited.
Actually, even the
So
way you just went like, reminded me of Ring in Ring Fit when he goes,
ah,
I had heard of Angelica. I don't know if I'm making this up or not, but I thought Angelica was also a type of like alcohol in the olden days.
I don't know. I
Let's
mean,
see.
it's entirely possible because it does have like an anise-like flavor, so it wouldn't surprise me.
I guess it's a type of brandy.
Oh, okay. So it's like a brandy infused with Angelica.
I guess. Oh, it's from candied Angelica. Oh my god, my water's boiling. Section 5, our last section. You made it. Where
Woo!
we we finish up our toppings and share our last steps with our glutoneers. Gretchen shows us this really cool way to make a scallion flour in this part. So I think we'll do a video of that.
Yes, we'll have a video. FLOWER, not FLOUR. Flour versus flour. We cook our noodles, assemble our bowls, and get to slurping, which Becca's not going to do because she objects to slurping as a sound.
I can't.
But
even thinking about it since I hate it so much. I can't. I hate mouth sounds. I'm just, anyway.
Anyway, enjoy section 5, sand slurping sounds.
Yeah, we didn't include them, but enjoy that way, please. So Gretchen's wrapping up her toppings.
Yep, I've got my eggs. So I made some marinated eggs to go with mine. My eggs are not very pretty though. I need older eggs. Older eggs make nicer, peel nicer.
Oh, what are you slicing up there?
I'm doing some green onions. So I'm getting ready to do my scallion flour trick, which I need some ice water to do it.
Okay.
I'm going to simmer these pieces of bacon that I made.
Okay.
In the broth or the marinade thing that I made. Sort of do it like the, what's that word? The char siu ramen. Is that what it was? Chashu. CHASHU, which is a braised pork belly. So I'm making a sort of fast bastardized version with some bacon that I had in the freezer that I had made at home. So it's not like bacon, but so doing sort of a similar broth. It's just, I was just wondering if I should do a quick dunk on my bok choy.
Got it.
And then cooking my noodles. I don't think any of the chefs would approve of that from yesterday, but I think I might just put my mushrooms in raw.
Okay.
Into
once it's hot.
Yeah.
I was trying to decide that too because I have my itakis and they're so thin. I didn't want to.
I think if you assemble your bowl, if you buy it and then pour the hot stock over them and let them sit in the stock for a minute, that should be plenty.
Okay.
Mushrooms do cook very quickly.
Right.
Scallion flowers.
Okay, great. So it's scallion flour time. We're making scallion flowers, or in my case, spring onion flowers.
So
lead me through this.
So you have a lot more real estate to work with, whereas I'm working with a scallion. We're working with scallion. Okay, I'm working with scallions. Becca's got green onions.
Spring onions.
So you want to slice not all the way down to the root. So you want towards the root. So you would flip it around. Yep. And so then you would cut in half.
So you cut the bulb in half?
Yes. So yes, you're cutting that bulb in half.
So you leave the top part intact.
You have to leave some of the root intact. That's to hold it together. Okay. Otherwise, you can just make little curly cues with them.
Okay.
It's not quite as impressive.
Like that?
Nope. The other way.
Shit.
Sorry.
So I busted it.
Yeah.
Well, I'll watch you do it.
Okay.
So there's like green to white.
Right.
And
so
you want to cut
kind of close to the, like where there's still some green, and you need to leave your root end intact because that's where the base of your flour is.
So if it's a green onion or a scallion and you're looking at white to green, you want to
Fine.
leave the very white tip intact.
Yes.
And so you want to cut from
a
a
little
little
bit
bit away from that all
Mhm.
the way down to where it starts to like branch out
Right.
into the little. Actually, I have another one. I have 3, so I can do it
Okay,
again.
good. Okay. Mine's a little bit closer to the bottom because it's a scallion. So yours is probably what, about 5 inches long?
Yeah.
That thing you're holding? Mine
Yeah.
is probably at most 3. So
Right. Mine's also about 1.5 inches wide.
yeah, it's a
So
lot bigger. So
this is huge.
you're gonna have a much cooler flour than I am. You're also gonna need some ice water, just so you know.
Okay. Ice water, check.
Okay. So you had the sort of the right idea before, just the wrong end of your onion.
Got it. All right, let's try this again. How is this?
Brilliant. All right.
All right.
Now you turn it so that you cut it so that it's quarters, but also still attached. So you got your first cut, and then you turn it a quarter of the way and get your second cut.
So cutting along the same lines as the first cut, you're now just making 4 sections instead of 2.
Right.
Got it.
Now this is as far as I can go, but you might be able to get in another couple cuts. You might be able to cut yours into 8ths.
I think I could. It's starting to separate and kind of flail out a little.
That's okay. Don't worry.
Okay. So while we're cutting this, one of my favorite things about that video game Persona 5 is that it's based in Japan. And a portion of it is kind of like battling things. Another portion of it is just living as a high school student in the Shibuya prefecture of Japan.
Oh, yeah.
And so you have to like take the subway and know the stops and explore the neighborhoods of the surrounding neighborhoods of Shibuya. And they spent a ton of time getting all of the detail really accurate. Yeah. So when you get off the subway station at Shibuya and you walk around and look around, it's reflective of what is real in that station. And so you have to spend all this time experiencing Japan. And it's such a fun way to play the game because they spent so much time getting it right that it feels so immersive. And I love that part of it. It's so fun.
That is really cool. So when you're done making your cuts, submerge your onion into the ice water.
So it's kind of just like
other way.
Shredded.
Yep. That looks great. Okay. And yours already starting to curl, so. Yeah. So it's kind of cool if you get some like variation. These were pretty skinny, so like they probably aren't going to make the best flours, but.
I see. We're not like chopping it up from this or anything. That's the flour.
Yeah.
Cool.
I mean, it's a kind of a useless thing to do, but.
No, it's so fun.
But it's also cool.
Super cool.
All right, so I'm gonna boil my noodles.
All right, so noodle time. I found fresh noodles. You found fresh noodles.
Yeah, see how these are? I've not used them before, so hopefully they're good.
Same. This says bring a big pot of water to a rapid boil and then tease the noodles apart. Cook over high heat for 2 minutes.
I should have opened these before. Oh, these are it's a woman-owned business.
Yeah, it is. Okay, I'm going to heat my broth up a little because I had it off.
Oh, right. I was also going to do that.
How do I put this big giant scallion spring onion flour on it? Just like drop it in one of the bowls?
Yeah.
Okay, cool.
Sorry, yours is going to be funny, but.
I know, I'm excited.
Oh, the ramen heads would be so mad at me for my noodles right now.
Why? What happened?
Oh, they kind of stuck to the bottom.
Oh, nuggets.
Yeah.
I haven't put mine in yet. I've been procrastinating because my broth isn't hot.
That's probably smart. They're not overdone, thankfully.
Ew.
Are you stirring your soup over there?
Yeah. Does it sound like I'm in a river?
I mean, sort of.
Wow, this broth is good.
Is it?
Yes.
I haven't actually tasted it yet. All right.
Oh, you got to taste it.
Huh. Oh, these noodles you can freeze. So I'm rinsing mine.
Okay.
Okay. Oh, I got to cut my eggs. Oh.
Do yours say rinse with cold water and then put some oil on it?
No. It just says serve with your broth.
Okay.
So.
Mine says to put oil with it. I was thinking a little sesame.
Yeah, that's probably what I would do.
Okay.
Ooh, my marinated eggs, although they are not very pretty, the yolks turned out perfect.
Yay!
Beautiful.
So what all toppings are you doing then?
Too many.
Too many. Tell me all about it.
So I've got sliced green onions. I've got mushrooms. I've got some braised bacon in chassou style.
Mhm.
I've got baby bok choy. I've got my
Mm.
flowers and my marinated egg.
Nice. That sounds delicious. So I've
Oh,
got my mushroom broth. Then I'm doing spring onion tips, mushrooms, which in my case is maitake, corn, bok choy, and broccoli. So my noodles are in the water. They're cooking up. I'm using some chopsticks to separate them as they cook. I'm spilling a lot of water and making a mess on my electrical stovetop. Final thoughts on ramen? I guess, should we taste it first before we offer those?
probably.
Yeah.
Probably. I should at least taste my broth, make sure it tastes okay.
Yeah, I'm
That might be
excited to
smart.
know about what your broth is like. There were times when watching that documentary made me wish I eat meat again.
It's not, I guess maybe I've never had miso ramen before.
Not totally what you were expecting.
Well, I think I was thinking more along the lines of miso soup, which is a bit more delicate, and this is definitely like kind of a very filling broth. So,
Sure, kind of
I think
different. Mine stuck to the bottom too. All right, rinsed with cold water. I'm gonna add a tiny bit of sesame oil. Okay, and then are you doing noodles into broth?
I'm gonna pour my broth over it.
Okay, so you're gonna assemble first. Okay, so talk me through your assembly.
All right, so I put the noodles into the bowl first. Then I topped with a little bit of each mushroom,
Okay.
and then some of the bok choy, and I stuck a spring onion flower on the side. Now I'm gonna put
Okay.
a little bit of my meat on top here, sort of an interesting flavor texture combination. And then I'm gonna put a little green onion to one side, and then I'm
Okay.
gonna put my broth on. I think I need more broth. I've got a lot of pork in here. Like I've been pouring broth in and I still can't even see it.
Uh-oh.
I think this might be a very hearty meal.
Well, the scallion flour is beautiful.
You mean your spring onion flour?
I'm sorry, my spring onion flour, yeah. I just have to make sure my broth is heated up enough to cook these mushrooms.
Okay.
When are you going to add your butter?
Oh, I'm going to put it on top.
Okay. One more thing that we wanted to talk about now that we have pretty much put all of it together. I still have to add my broth, but otherwise assembled. Apparently, the best only way to enjoy ramen is by slurping it up. I have a huge problem with mouth sounds. So this was an issue for me throughout the entire documentary and just life. And I get why that's important in this moment. So I'm not going to do it. I hope you do it. I hope everyone at home does it. It's not my thing. I don't want to hear you do it. And I'm really glad that we all know you have to slurp it while you enjoy it.
Mm-hmm. It's essential. All right.
Okay, please go.
Enjoy and see you for the
That was
next
a lot.
high gluttony marathon.
Yes.
So thanks for joining us. This was an epic adventure in the land of
Definitely.
high gluttony.
Mm-hmm.
We learned so much, and we highly recommend watching Ramen Heads. If you haven't gotten that idea by now, we do.
So go forth, make ramen. We highly encourage you to find a recipe you like, to then make it your own. We talk a lot we don't talk a lot, we talk briefly about ramen being a belief system for a lot of these chefs. And so if you're into this, we hope that you can find your own ramen belief system and let us know about it.
I mean, I'm not there yet, but I have a lot more styles to explore, so I will definitely be doing that.
And I'll follow Gretchen's journey because most of those will probably include meat.
Probably. Let's not lie to ourselves. They will.
Right.
Anyway, follow us on your favorite podcasting app that we're a part of, and also Facebook, Instagram. We have a website where we post all our info. And thank you for joining us. And YouTube, yes. Make sure you join the YouTube.
The YouTube. Thanks for joining us. We had fun. We hope you have fun.
High gluttony.
Until next time.